Thank you, Reverend Matt. Maggie, if you could just go ahead and put up the slides and advance to the second slide that shows what we have in mind for the agenda, that would be wonderful. There are a couple of handouts at your table. The one you'll be using during the workshop simply says proposed 21-23 priority goal strategy. And what you'll see on the slides are the same words that are on this paper. We just try to find some way to make it simple so as you go back through and suggest revisions or refinements, that it will be easy for you to sort. We still have a lot of refining to do, but this is a start. So what we wanted to do this afternoon is to simply give each of our cabinet members who is in charge of one of these areas an opportunity to see the updates that have occurred as a result of the feedback from principal and teacher representative groups or any other groups since they last discussed the strategies, goals, and priorities with you. So Carolyn Belcher's going to talk about the COVID recovery priority. I think Michelle. We won't spend time talking about that today because you'll have your own workshop on that later, probably next month. And then Erica will finish it out talking about the communication and engagement piece. Again, this will just be a quick flyby, 2 to 3 minutes each, and the remainder of the time will be the board's time. Reverend Matt to talk about the revisions and refinements you made. So, Carolyn, if you could get started, that'd be wonderful.
Sure. Good afternoon. It's good to see everyone. The headline here, and when we remember as we were talking about the COVID achievement gap, we saw the biggest gap after we looked at the map in the FastBridge results within a few places, particularly second grade reading was behind where it had been historically. And also our FastBridge results showed that a majority of our kindergarten students and a majority of our first grade students some are at high risk of being off track. So that's a clear place where we need to put some extra energy is early childhood, K-2. Additionally, given the importance of mathematics and the fact that we are seeing higher failure rates than we would like to see in terms of courses, there's the question around should we dig in at the system level to algebra, given that's a gatekeeper where, as ACT said recently, like 59% of the 2016 high school graduates were twice as likely to apply and complete college when they successfully pass out. So it's a key thing. I think from the 3 strategies that we outlined here, there's a lot of energy among principals and teachers for having a pool of money that allows teachers and principals to customize the solution for their particular campus. So specifically, for example, a teacher raised the idea that sometimes the duties that they do take a lot of time, either waiting for the buses in the morning or waiting at lunchtime. If they could use that time for tutoring and leverage it differently, that might be a way for us to accelerate instruction and use folks like teaching assistants or classified staff to supervise some of the duties. So some of this would be quick fixes that folks are interested in. And then I think any outside provider who were actually going to pursue that, we were clear that the messages that would lighten the load so that an outside provider is taking on some of the algebra tutoring so that the principals can focus on another priority. And I think the key thing is that all the principals want to make sure that that's a good fit for them in their school and enter into a new group. So I think those are the key headlines. I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add, Michelle, to those conversations with principals and teachers. No, then I'll go to the second priority around access to mental health service, trauma-informed instruction, and supports to remain healthy social and emotionally. I think in general, folks really see this as important. I think one of the things that we need to do is the data analysis that shows, given the board's investment in the mission critical priority around social and emotional learning, how much of a win did we see with that additional investment? And what does that likely mean for what we're going to have for the next stage of this work? So Jennifer Coker, who leads the Department of Alternative Programs, ran some numbers, and we are able to see that, and I've got all this data on my desk. Can I find the right piece of data to impress you with? that we've seen real reductions in the number of discipline offenses and reports and suspensions in places where we've had the social emotional learnings in place, the curriculum in place, and the additional support through meetings at the school site, which we call MTSS meetings, where we're talking about individual kids, of having those extra adults from the Department of Alternative Certification. So before we come up with a specific program on a budget ask, we want to be able to show you the data of the value add. But again, I think the general response of principals and teachers is this is definitely needed. And in fact, wanted to ensure that the adults were also prioritized, given they've also gone through a trauma, and want to make sure there's some space for them to express their own mental health needs, either within the school day or within some existing structures.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So this next big area of academic improvement, we believe is anchored, is grounded in proficiency and growth, making sure that our boys and girls are growing at an appropriate pace and rate every year. The 3 strategies that we want to feature in this presentation center around curriculum and instruction. So what do we teach and how do we teach it? So first, we are focusing on math with our Bridges curriculum, our illustrative math for the middle grades, and then our ongoing assessment project, which we call OGAP. It kind of frames for teachers and educators the how we teach, just solid practices of instruction. So that's a premier focus for us. Next is ELA. We know we have to invest in a viable and guaranteed curriculum, which just simply states that every child, all children have access to quality curriculum, instruction, and materials. And so we have work to do with ELA. We are working now with a committee, a task force, to help build out and frame for us what that curriculum will be moving forward. But for the last several years, at least at the elementary level, we have put intentionality around creating a phonics program to make sure that our students have a strong background in phonics, phonemic awareness, and early literacy skills. And we believe that a comprehensive ELA package program will only complement and further our efforts with ELA. And then finally, you've heard about the Long Beach College Promise before. If the board is inclined to create a pathway for all Charleston County students that ensures that access to college and a living wage job. And so the collaboration would be among the district, our community partners, the business sector, as well as 2- and 4-year colleges to ensure that our students have, at the end of their K-12 experience, the opportunity to go to college. Thank you, Maggie. The next layer under academic improvement, we want to accentuate, feature, and pay particular attention to acceleration schools. So we have defined a group of schools that need immediate support. And so with that, we hone in at the building level on what professional development should look like in our PLCs, in our professional learning communities. And so that work only happens when principal supervisors, people like myself, are side by side, elbow to elbow, alongside principals in those PLCs and in the classrooms.
What does PLC stand for?
Professional learning communities. And so the teachers, the leaders, the coaches, they make up a professional learning community. Exacting the work is a function of that professional learning community. And then strategy B speaks to building capacity in our leadership. And so we've been working, as you've heard, with the University of Virginia to support some of our building level leaders with the skills, the knowledge, the disposition required to lead some of our more challenging environments. And so we are rounding out year 1 of that partnership and looking forward to more successful years to come with them. And then strategy C speaks of the acceleration team. So having dedicated people whose singular sole focus is on this group of schools and leaders to make sure they have the adequate supports, resources, and materials to do the good work. And so that's our executive director, a coach, and Ms. Belcher. And then strategy C speaks to that regular coaching. So how do we get better every day at what we do? We believe in continuous improvement, refining our skills, addressing where learning gaps are, addressing where problems of practice lie, and then coming up with the right strategies to address them. And then finally, D, reducing the number of chronically struggling schools by partnering. So those partnerships and innovative approaches are on the table, not exclusive to any one outfit, program, or entity, but we do want to be open to the idea of partnering with others. I want to say that's academic improvement. No, I'm not done. Sorry. And goal 3, under academic improvement, speaks to increasing kindergarten readiness. How could I forget that? So we have already started the process of adopting a comprehensive ELA component or curriculum that embeds social-emotional, it embeds physicality, it embeds some math. And we couple that with Hegarty's. Now, Hegarty's is a program that embeds that phonics, phonemic awareness on a daily basis to give our boys and girls those early literacy skills that are critical and crucial to them being successful, solid readers. And then strategy B speaks to developing at least 2 models of the early childhood programming, like what we have at Mary Ford. So you will find, as soon as Mr. Baroe is prepared to roll out capital program options, that we will have another opportunity to duplicate and replicate what we've done at Mary Ford at either Latson or Lambs. So we're excited about that. And truly this time, finally for strategy C, we are aiming to professionalize our early Head Start and Head Start faculty so that there's about a 5-year window or span of time by which we intend to have more and more of those professionals with certificates, i.e. trying to ensure that students have quality, high quality learning experiences every day. And now it's time for
sure?
Mr. Brinkman, I'm sure this
I'm like waiting for my slide here. So priority 3, talent. So the principals and teacher groups that we met with, of course, were very supportive. I did not have a reason from our conversations to modify anything that's on here. So I'll do a quick recap from what we discussed last time. But the first goal, to attract, retain, and reward educators, leaders, and all staff. So at this point, we'll be bringing back to the board for the budget process for 2022 the 3rd phase of the teacher salary structure. So many of you may recall we were on a 3-year plan, and this year it was put on hold. So we're basically reviewing that schedule, see where we would have been and where should we be for next year. Also, we've received board directive through audit and finance to bring all non-instructional positions to 98% of market, so we're working through that as well. Strategy B, in developing our pipeline for principals, really want to work with our current assistant principals and develop a plan so that those professionals grow into becoming our principals. So that's a strategy with Carolyn Belcher with Learning Services, with Michelle Simmons and Dr. Williams as well. The diversity in our teaching force, that is huge. That is a huge initiative for HR and the cultural competency team in partnership. I know last time I talked about grow our own opportunities, which I feel very strongly about. I won't get into all those details, but Teach Charleston, Teach Local, a residency program for elementary teachers of color for males. And strategy D, just continuing to improve upon our hiring and recruitment processes. Early hiring is something I talked about last time, and that is something we've always done, but we really need to be very, very strategic on that. You go to the next slide. Goal 2, improving the retention of effective teachers and leaders. Basically, strategy A, B, and C talks about SCTS, our South Carolina Teaching Standards 4.0 through the state. The strategy A is we have to continue to support our induction teachers. That's our brand new teachers in the classroom. That's critical. We have a mentoring and support program for first-year teachers. Strategy B is around the evaluation process to really give objective feedback to our teachers so they can grow and learn. And strategy C is to continue offering professional development for our administrators and our principals who are responsible for teaching and learning in their building. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board. We've got 2 goals for the capital building program. The first one is to get you all to approve the project priority list. That's essentially the waves that you've all seen. 3 of those waves we presented, each covers 3 to 4 years, covering 16 projects that have already been approved for funding. Under the strategy, we've completed all those action items short of bringing forward that list next month. Within Mr. Kennedy's budget, the bond anticipation notes include the funding to begin those wave 1 projects. Next slide, please. Goal number 2 is to actually begin those wave 1 projects, and that begins by establishing our project management capability for the next building program. We're working with procurement, who has a lead in this discussion to establish how we will procure and move ahead with project management. Just as a reminder for the group, if you haven't heard, the current project management for the Phase 4 building program is 30% SWMB, and all 30% of that SWMB is African American. Second strategy under the goal number 2 is to establish a new Citizens Oversight Steering Committee. Until we have that new committee established, we'll utilize the current committee that's on board for the Phase 4 program. Much like we did last time, that Phase 5 committee will eventually phase out the Phase 4 committee after we get it up and running. I expect that to happen later this summer.
Good afternoon. Much like Mr. Brigman, when we went through our goals and strategies with our school principals and teachers, not much significant change in the slides that I've presented before. So I'll just give you some a high-level overview. And one, just before one, it's all about increasing our stakeholder communication and making sure that we have effective two-way communication. So we want to increase the number of followers who have downloaded our app and the number of social media followers. And we want to increase that by 10%. And we're going to monitor our analytics. But one of the things that we will do, in addition to the strategies outlined here, is be creative in making sure that we reach those parents who we aren't reaching using any of these strategies and or goals. As it relates to goal 2, we talked with our teachers and principals and even some really good feedback that we received from our small group who met with us, is that we do need to reach out to the groups that are already established, like our PTAs and SICs, to make sure that we are effectively communicating what we're doing here at the district office and making sure that parents know what's going on in their schools as well as the community. And then finally, with goal 3, using technology to listen and respond to our stakeholder issues and concerns. And so what we're talking about there is, of course, we understand survey and data collection, but we're talking about quick surveys. For example, the survey that was used to find out how parents and community and even students and teachers feel about the calendar options that were presented. So we want to use the technology tools that we have at our fingertips to gain data so that we can do a better job and increase the communication that we are currently, to increase our communication lanes that we are currently using to share information as well as get information. That's all I have.
Thank you, Erica. Now we will turn it back over to you. That was just a quick reminder of what we have put on the table. There are 4 priorities that we would like the board to reach some agreement on, or to the extent that you can today, refining or reviewing. And those are the COVID relief, the academic improvement, the talent strategy, and the communications and engagement. Again, we'll come back to the phase 5 capital building program goal in future meetings. So thank you, Reverend Mack.
Thank you, Board Member. So just so that we can all stay on the topic, let's take each priority one at a time. If there are any questions, the first priority is the COVID-19 recovery plan. So we want to only ask questions at this particular point in time in reference to the COVID-19 recovery plan. And we'll go around asking those questions.
And I apologize already, I'm going to contradict you, but before we can even as a board begin to talk about these and flesh them, when are you anticipating that you need us finished with this and you want us to vote on it?
In March.
So we have, how many more meetings between now and March will this board have an opportunity to talk about these goals?
As a board, there's just one more committee of the whole meeting, and then there's the March meeting. But we will have to make we have to move forward with some of our personnel decisions, and at least where we think we'd like to head with our budget recommendations.
So we have now in the committee of the whole, and then they're going to have to be an up or down vote for the board.
Yes, ma'am.
When will we see dollar figures that are committee budget?
So this is part of the iterative process. That's what we're asking today, for some nod that we're headed in the right direction. Then we will invest, after today, we're going to invest a lot of time putting the dollars with this. But we want to make sure that we don't have anything on here that is unacceptable to the board, so that we don't invest time in it. So some planning has already begun, but that planning begins in earnest in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We have to put numbers to this.
So is it fair to assume that there will be, Reverend Mack, an appropriate amount of time at the committee of the whole to vet these with dollar figures next to them?
Only if, after hearing our questions today, if there's an allotted enough time for staff to go back and be able to put dollar figures to questions that we have today. Only if that is only feasible, but if that is not, then I don't.
Then we're going to be making budget decisions through the goals achievement without dollar figures.
Well, as we continue to move further, as we can redefine these dollar amounts, yes.
Right. I would prefer that this board not get in a position where we make decisions that bind the budget through the process of goal setting, that we at least have some knowledge of that. And I appreciate that it'll be worked on intensely, because it's extremely important if we're going to have to make those decisions.
Right, and just because you have a set of goals, as we did a couple of years ago, you'll have to come back and prioritize things. It's sort of like, as we said last time, designing a house. There are certain things you want, but in the process of making the budget fit the wants, some things have to take priority over others, and that will be part of the budget process, which takes a little longer.
Right. I think this is unique because these COVID plans are expensive and need to be immediate. So it's a little different than just general goals, and maybe that's the area we'll focus the most on, getting some dollar figures around.
It is, and I would just say very quickly, most of the COVID recovery won't need to come from general operating funds.
Correct.
Yeah, we'll still, but by binding those funds, you're choosing not to do something else. We still want a broader picture of what we're making a decision on.
Okay, let's get into any questions that we may have. Do you want to respond to that close the way? Just as long as you don't have a responding questions come back and comment. All right, so let's start with Dr. French.
Okay, one thing that I'm curious about the COVID recovery part is.
Dr. French, can you hold for 1 second? Just so I don't want to create no rules that we will along we have moved around that have changed. So let me just say, you can ask 2 questions so that we can move along, and hopefully someone else will have a question and we can answer as well too. Okay?
So my main question is, you mentioned referrals have gone down where you have the SEL curriculum in place, and that sounds really good, but what tools do we have to assess the mental health and trauma issues that are happening right now that maybe are different than in years past, so we know what tools are necessary to support those students?
It's a good question. and it's not, on the clinical side, it's not my expertise, so I don't want to project. I do think, as I've said in a previous workshop, we are looking into making sure that there is access to medical professionals for all students, because there is a gap. So some students are covered by Medicare, Medicaid. Some students are covered by a private insurance, but there's some students that are in the middle who may require mental health referrals and help who are not covered, and we want to cover them as part of this effort. And so that's one piece of it, and I assume part of that would be a medical evaluation, which I just don't have the expertise to speak to. And the second piece is we want to measure our success just in general with this initiative through reduction of discipline referrals, lowering of suspensions and expulsions, and we want to use a survey that we're assessing both adults in the system as well as students in the system to measure changes in, I like school, I feel like I have an adult in the building who supports me, I feel like I understand the purpose of my instruction, I feel like someone here cares about me, that kind of thing. The instrument we're looking at right now is Michelle, Mr. Simmons, you remember the name Para? It's well known.
I know.
It'll come to you when it's not my turn to speak.
I can't think of
And is any of that related to the Project Prevent grant? Is that part of what you're leveraging to do this work?
That has seeded some of where we're going. So part of the Project Prevent grant also is covering the extension of our data management tools so that we can better integrate academic, truancy, behavior, and other information that we know about families to inform the TSS systems as well as academic intervention. And we are piloting that right now in the Project Prevent schools that are covering the cost of that initial pilot.
Okay, that's good.
I'm good on this.
Okay, Lieutenant,
No questions right now.
Ms. Cole?
COVID recovery. Is it possible?
Speaking.
Under the achievement gaps, and I'm looking at under COVID, is it possible, like you said, the tools that we're measuring for social and emotional, is it possible to switch those around? Can we prioritize like social emotional over academics right now? Like once we move those forward, can we focus more on the social emotional, I guess?
I think obviously that's part of the decision I think the group is making today. I don't think it has to be a choice of one over the other, given that we have a lot of resources coming into the district from the federal government and the state. We can put more resources towards those priorities, both of them, the academic priority as well as the social emotional health priority simultaneously. And I would argue, I think that they're somewhat related because the extent to which like lessons are engaging and fun and the teacher knows the kid in a real way, an authentic way, that obviously contributes to academics, but it also contributes to social emotional health as well.
Is ACEs been introduced anywhere in here? Are we introducing ACEs across the, I heard them introduced at 2 schools, but is this something that we can move forward across the district?
I'm sorry, remember this? ACEs. I don't know the answer to that question. No.
I don't know ACEs, Ms. Coakley. Adverse childhood experiences? I heard it introduced.
Yes, in terms of an assessment of, it's an instrument used to assess what's going on at home. We are using that, but it's not my expertise. Can I follow up with you in terms of how we're using that? Because it is the general way of assessing trauma and making sure that we're thinking about trauma-informed instruction. But it's not my expertise, and I don't want to speak when I don't know what I'm talking about.
Actually, I'm very impressed with this aspect of the plan and what y'all have put together. Certainly, we want to see some specifics instead of more instruction, and we want to know specifics around it. No, this is good.
Ms. Dorn?
I don't have a question on this particular item. Looks good.
I think that's one, and you probably said this before. How are participants determined? Does our parents opt in? Are teachers making recommendations? How do you determine who uses the service?
For academic intervention?
Either any part, how people opt into the service?
So on the academic piece, we're looking at test score data that we've got, which is a variety of different test score data from the information that we shared with the board last time, FastBridge and MAP. We also, if we do administer the SC Ready and looking at grades, so we have a targeted list, for example, of students that would benefit from summer programming this summer. We would keep revisiting that as we think about other interventions. So something like the 8th grade algebra tutoring, that's looking at kids who are at risk of failing. And then the SDL and other interventions around that, some of it is, we don't have it everywhere because we made it, in the mission critical work, we increased the number of social workers and behavior interventionists and others, but not to every school. So we're in part going to add capacity in places where there are holes. And that is less about particular students as it is making sure that we've got the resources, because we feel like a lot of kids across all of our schools have suffered trauma and need space to process what they've gone through and reconnect with what it's like to be in school every day.
Okay, I have no questions with the full committee. Thank you so much. We will start with priority number 2, academic improvement, Dr. French.
Okay, when you talk about the Long Beach College Promise, you know, this would be our own project that we would develop for this more specific to our district, I assume. And could we look at including apprenticeship programs? There are a lot of different trades that offer these where students can start as early as, you know, a junior in high school. Is that something that we can incorporate into that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then for the second section, well, actually, I'm looking at all these percentages, and I kind of feel lost about how we decide what percentage of students we want to achieve at a certain level. And it looks like you've broken it into the whole district and into acceleration schools. I was looking at the 2018-2019 report cards. It looks like 28 of our elementary schools are below 50% on ELA, for instance. So that's a lot more than the acceleration schools group. And then I wonder if that's where we need to, I feel like we need a different way to look at this data than just, oh, there's a subset of schools that we've already identified that need help. But like you were saying with the COVID, looking in the mental health, looking where kids are everywhere and understanding how to help them more. How do we set these targets in a reasonable way and yet to have really ambitious goals over the next 2 years? Do you have any guidance for us on that?
What we've done in the past, Dr. French, so pre-COVID we had,
I should have been.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
either one, either one can speak to it, but pre-COVID we had targets for both proficiency and growth, and they were based on the last, say, 3 years of how our children performed. Looking at trend data will inform where we land. So I want to say off the top of my head, the last target was about 65%, because as a district, we may have been at 60. So when you speak of more than the acceleration schools performing at a particular level, so we think about it in tiers. So who has an immediate need for something more or something different? But right above them, there's a layer or a tier of schools who also need support, who are, i.e., getting that support from a variety of mechanisms in the system, like our MTSS, multi-tiered systems of supports framework. And so what we believe is we will capture all schools when we think about growth and proficiency, but we also need to target the neediest, the most prone to not be on grade level by extrapolating that acceleration group. Are you saying you want it broken down even more than that?
Oh, not necessarily, but I do think it's important to target the kids who are performing at, say, at the lowest quartile, at wherever they happen to be. And I hear you saying that that is part of the plan.
Yeah,
each school, oh, sorry, Michelle. I'm sorry, y'all. Each school is going to have their own specific proficiency and growth
No, you
goals.
can't hear you.
So each school is going to have their own proficiency and growth goals on top of what the district goals are. So at that individual school level, then they're going to have to kind of dig deeper into that data and then identify those kids that you're talking about. So is that clear? Sorry.
Just say it in the mic.
Because everybody I have a pretty big mouth, so I don't know if I need to microphone or not. Ms. Green?
I'm good.
Okay, Member Taylor?
Can you just remind me of the implementation timeline for the ELA curriculum?
Absolutely. So our idea is to start with acceleration schools in the upcoming school year, but by 23-24, have a segment. So it's usually a rollout starting with about a dozen schools and then another dozen, so on and so forth. But we do intend to allow schools to opt in who feel like they're positioned and ready to do so.
Will acceleration schools have that opportunity to opt in, or will it?
It's around the implementation strategy, so it may make sense, for example, the early childhood open court phonics is relatively new for some schools. So changing that in early childhood may not make sense for next year, but maybe it makes sense to do it in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in an acceleration tool. So the execution should be driven on what the school thinks is the right combination. And our hope is to have the acceleration schools as well as enough of a mix of others that opt in that give us a sense of the full district. So we have a good sense of how the curriculum would work, similar to what we did with Bridges and Luster did, so that as we roll it out, we're learning and we can do a better job each year on the rollout.
Thank you.
Ms. Coleman?
Nothing, I have nothing, thank you.
Yes, that's just, my question is, how will we engage parents and the community in the process of academic improvement with all of the plans that we have?
I think one clear place is around the idea of partnership schools. And if we do decide that we want to pursue outside partners within schools, that's got to be a collaborative decision with the community and family. If folks feel like that's a good option for their school community and it's offering something that they weren't getting before. So that feels like a very clear place where family and community engagement absolutely needs to matter. I think on all of these things, as we talk about academic supports, so much of it is also helping the parents understand ways in which they can support their child's work at home. So the beauty, I think, of any new ELA curriculum is that everything's in sort of one place, but the idea of still being able to practice reading at home, practice fluency of math facts, making those connections to real life, we still need family support on that. And so bringing in ways so that the curriculum isn't a different language to them, they're familiar with those tools, they're getting feedback on those tools, and they can reinforce it at home.
Can I ask you else?
I'm sorry, Dr. Fraser, did you get that one? No? Okay, Ms. Coleman?
So one of the things that started out was let me ask you this overarching question. We've talked about OGAP and illustrative math, and we've implemented these. Does that mean we have unimplemented the old? Are we getting, I want to know, we've always had an issue in the district that there's confusion over what is being taught. Are we system-wide going to be doing these math programs? And if yes, are we there today? And that would be the same question with the ELA. Is this going to be system-wide and be the system-wide as opposed to having pockets elsewhere at the end of your implementation program?
Yes, ma'am. So when we phase in a program like Bridges, then we phase out the old. So for example, because of our COVID year, there were some schools that were due to start Bridges this year that won't start until the upcoming year. So it's still phasing in, but that's the intention, to have an exclusive, a sole program. That's our core. Now, will they have other programming to supplement, to enrich, to sometimes remediate? They will, but Bridges is exclusive for elementary, illustrative is exclusive to middle.
And if I heard you correctly, just so I can clarify your answer, students get Bridges, period. But if they need something else, they get Bridges and. They don't get an or and not get Bridges. Everyone gets Bridges, and then there are supplements that are ands on top of that. So it is system-wide. Where you live doesn't determine whether you get Bridges or not. There will be supplements on top of it.
Correct.
The only exception then is this exceptional education.
Right.
In some cases, there are specific curriculum.
Right, but I understand that, should acknowledge that. The task force to vet and adopt the ELA you said create a task force, and you said we're working with a task force. Are these a task force of strictly employees or other educational professionals that y'all have reached out to in a peer sort of manner?
Mostly education professionals, but we also have consultation with a group, Leading Educators, who's also working with the acceleration schools to support teaching and learning, instructional practices, professional learning communities. So
you
they've been
working
consulting.
with other educational experts beyond just our staff to
Yes.
get a more global vision.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Kind of on the same note, and I apologize for saying about it. One thing that's in the 2018 to 2020 goal, which I know the year that we've been doing with COVID, is select and implement a well-articulated literacy curriculum and align curriculum, yada, yada, yada. So it sounds like you didn't do that in 18, but we're in the process of doing that now. So how far along are we in this, with the ELA? And it sounds like what I hear you guys saying is, as we've done with the math, we'll have a maybe elementary curriculum that everybody follows except for the exception terms, and middle and high. So each school will be doing their own thing. So how soon do we get to that place?
How long will it take to build out the entire ELA program for
Yes.
all schools? I don't think we have a pinpoint timeline, could be 3 to 4 years, but we always start with like a pilot size to understand the nuances, the intricacies around programming, professional development, what does training and support look like. And so we thought it would behoove us to start with the acceleration schools and others who can opt into the program.
And if we wanted to know more about individual board members, wanted to know more about that process, is there somewhere on Google Drive that we can just read stuff, or is that a possibility at some point?
I think we could put together a board update. Again, the criteria right now is that Leading Educators is helping us look at the what else is out there nationally, along with education reports, which is tiers curricula. And then we're also making sure we consider other things that are important as reflected by the board priorities, like cultural competency within that selection. As a reminder, part of the reason for the phase-in also is that we're ahead of the state on this. So the state is, we are a state adoption state, and next year they're looking at the standards again, and then the following year they anticipate looking at curriculum. So we're in communication with the state because we don't want to get out in front of them, similar to the way we were with math. But it's been over 8 years and we're behind, so waiting longer is not helping kids. So that's the negotiation we're trying to do.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, ask, with the different curriculums and all of the supplemental things that can accompany them, it would be great to at a later date, or even in our broken up groups, we could get a better understanding of all the things that are available to people to use. Because I'm finding myself too not able to quite put together how it all works. And it sounds like several others have questions about that too, so just a thought. And then the second thing, this has come up for me recently, and it's not here explicitly, and I'm not trying to put it here explicitly either, because I know we got to tackle certain things at times. But as we've been on the school tours and I've gone into other schools, the thing that keeps coming up is that we don't have strong middle schools. And so I'm really thinking about how we can incorporate that here some kind of way, or just talk about how we address it. And I was looking for the place it is, I don't know quite where, so I'm just wondering if there are other thoughts around that. You know, I think about Morningside, I think about Simmons Pinckney. Where are like the efforts to really get those to be strong middle schools, so many of your students don't think they can go to East Ed, and you know, Percy students don't think they can only apply to academic magnet or go elsewhere.
Thank you for that, Ms. Waters.
So,
I do have one more question, if you'll let us go another.
let me get my question. So, help me understand a little bit about the academic curriculum that's being established for the Head Start and the free Head Start time. And in addition to the rigorous childhood program that's being established district-wide for nearly full math class. And I'm asking that question because I know we're starting family engagement across the district. So I want to know, what is the game plan or the thought process behind that? Because this will become the beginning role model, I would think, as we begin to disseminate this across the district.
Sure, Reverend Max. So similar to what we've done with math and are preparing to do with literacy and reading is our focus for early learning. So to have a comprehensive program, that's the core, that's the focus, that's just pretty much the basis of what all early childhood programming will entail. That's creative curriculum. So we are still in the process of rolling that out to all schools as well. So what students receive from that curriculum features literacy, some mathematics, numeracy, SEL, social emotional learning components, all embedded in one. But we also understand the importance of a strong phonics and phonemic awareness background so that students understand the relationship between sounds and letters and words. We have Heggerty that we couple with the creative curriculum. So that's a standard that will be present and evident among all early learning programs, whether it's Mary Ford or a new one coming online like the Lambs or Latson. They'll all have that standard curriculum instructional base. And so the family and child component is the idea that particularly with the smallest students, we absolutely need that partnership. And if we're going to serve students well, we have to be able to engage their families as well. So while our priority at first at Mary Ford was to make sure we had the academic piece in place, so they're still building out the upstairs, which will house that parenting component. So we see that as a blueprint, as foundation by which we can build out other early learning programs. Did I answer your question? I'm not sure.
You did. So is there not a standardized adoption across the board throughout the district for the Head Start program already? And if so, then are we adding on top of that?
Right.
That we're trying to roll out or trying to revamp that program? What is it?
So that's the build out that I just described. So creative curriculum has taken on some iterations, some different packages over the years. And so our team, headed by Kim Foxworth, under the leadership of Michelle English Watson, have decided and defined creative curriculum as the gold standard for early learning. So that would encompass Head Start and early learning programs across the county.
Particularly for 3 and 4-year-olds and K. And the one thing is this board knows we paid for that curriculum too as part of Mission Critical. So there's a phase in of us actually being able to afford. So we did it with, I think it was 30 classrooms this past year, including Mary Ford. And then the idea is to grow that this year as we buy more, both the Haggerty and the creative curriculum across the CD classrooms. And the 3-4-year-old of Head Start, because we also obviously have early Head Start.
So, one short question. Can we assume that when you talk about the UVA program, that is a district school leadership professional development program? So that's what the UVA partnership strictly does, is development for leaders.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure we had that on the table.
District leaders and principals.
Right, school and district. And I just want to reiterate what Reverend Mack and Ms. Waters said, specifically in the fact that we're trying to adopt some sort of annual discussions. We need to implement in there has to be a beginning of the year report that is discussed among the board of where these programs exist. So you say Haggerty, and now I'm confused because I just got on board with the creative curricula, and then probably have that report done at the end of the year. And we can, so the board has a continuous access to understanding how rolled out these things are.
Yes, ma'am.
This relates to the task force, maybe Carolyn. Remember that months ago we had done an RFP to try to solicit some professional help to come in with the acceleration schemes. Where are we with that?
So from that process and related, some of the organizations ended up partnering anyway. So for example, Engaging Creative Minds has been working with Sanders Clyde. They'd expressed some interest. That partnership just happened more organically. Ms. Simmons had reached out to UVA as a strategy around supporting. We continue to pursue that, and now they're supporting leadership development and really school turnaround for district leaders, Ms. Simmons and I, and Dr. Williams included, as well as principals. I think a lot of that focus was around the idea of partnership schools that would come in and potentially work with a school and similar to Meeting Street and ultimately sort of become a community school model. We didn't find a partner through that process and have not solicited new applications since that period of time.
Okay, all right, that's what I was gonna ask, if it's still, you know, something that y'all are getting responses to, but right now, not.
No, not, and that was a board decision that we reached the end of the timeline at that point, so we should focus on something else.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned exceptional students and that curriculum might be different, and I'm concerned because if this curriculum is really good, shouldn't you just be putting exceptional students maybe at a different level of the curriculum rather than giving them something completely different? And I've also had meant to ask before, I'd really like to understand if there's any correlation between the students that are not performing well academically and whether or not they are exceptional students. Because if that's a big part of the problem in our district, then we might need a different strategy for how to address it. So I just wondered if you could look into that.
I don't, at this point, we haven't broken out our map, or I haven't seen it, and perhaps Ms. Holt-Piltry, who leads that department, has by exceptionally, so I'll make sure I look at that before we go to our next board meeting to see if there were any trends. When I talk about the curriculum, most kids are going to get Bridges and any ELA curriculum. There are some kids who have severe and profound needs or unique needs, like in some ways, some of our ELA curriculum are not built for kids with dyslexia, and having a different approach, still to the same goals of learning how to read and incorporate text, learn knowledge, but there's a more structured approach, and I would love to be able to tell you the name, but today seems like name recall just gone, that we've also invested in, so that's just because it's more appropriate for that. And then some of our severe and profound learners have different kinds of goals for their readiness, which might be more life skills related than academic, but that is a very small percentage of our overall student population or overall exceptional education population. I just didn't want to speak it and not recognize that.
Yeah. My next question is, how are we interfacing Head Start with our regular programs in the district, early childhood program? I can remember when we stopped using the Head Start buses, transportation. Will there be any collaboration so that we can get these buses back on track and we can get students to these schools? How working is there to make sure that there's a smooth transition and that we can interface and the students can move, strictly into our regular programs?
And I know Mrs. Copley, you've been talking to Kim Fox about this, so feel free to jump in if I'm saying something that you know better than I do. I think what we're trying to do is make sure that we have the classes where we have the need, and frankly, both because of facility constraints as well as COVID constraints, because we're trying to spread classrooms out in different buildings, we do have some disconnect between where they're most needed and where we're offering some of our Head Start classes or CD classes. So for example, North Charleston, we've been talking about the Ladson, Lambs place, the facilities are so tight that it's hard to fit a CD classroom in those buildings, and that makes it a little less accessible, which is part of the reason that we're moving towards trying to integrate it into the new facilities as we build it out. One of the things that I don't know about busing, so I can ask that question and come back around Head Start. We are definitely trying to make sure that there's not a different instructional program for 3-4-year-olds in Head Start versus 3-4-year-olds in any of our CD, or 4-year-olds in our CD program, which is why we're moving to the creative curriculum. and using the Haggerty more broadly. And in Mary Ford, that's where we modeled, we have some of our best early childhood teachers across the district. The principal there used to lead early childhood and was able to recruit some very talented folks. And that's from 0 really to K. And so one of the things is most of those folks are certified or have extended education in early childhood. That is our aim over the next few years, is to pivot towards more of a professionalization of that workforce, but using our current people. And we're trying to figure out, which I believe is coming to the board on a vote for Head Start, that we would actually give professional learning opportunities to those educators to move towards a college degree, to move towards licensure, to support their development. So it's both a community building activity and hopefully also a retention strategy that we professionalize the core over time.
All right, thank you. At this time, priority number 3, Cal, is there any questions in regards to this? Group without approach.
We're at challenge right now? I think we've gone over that a little long.
Okay. Ms. Green?
Thank you.
No, I don't have any.
Mr. Miller?
Not for you in public.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Cole?
No.
Valerie?
Yes, I am so glad that we have decided to implement a program so that we can have talent that we can reach back and what I talent. And I can't help but to overemphasize the problem that I'm having in my district right now. Mr. Mills, Dr. Mills, I didn't know here, is that still being without a principal for a year. And if this had been in place before now, we wouldn't have the problem that we're having right now with schools not having a full-time person in place. In my community, students are suffering, I think, in my opinion, because we do not have a full-time staff person to lead that school. So I'm happy to see this, but I'm just dismayed that it didn't come by sooner. Thank you for your work on behalf of our students.
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions, except we have to keep figuring out full market value. The only market for certain educational jobs in Charleston County is Charleston County. Charleston County is the market. So if we're using parallel markets or comparatory markets, we need to know what that means when you say full market value, especially in a district in which the entire county is the market.
I'll run a question. Just one. Is there any thought around what we can do to get more high school students interested in teaching? And I know this is probably like at the university level, but I'm also wondering on the local level what we could do, just for the, the fewer and fewer folks that are interested in entering the teacher ed program.
Certainly. We're looking as part of our teaching pathways department or program, looking more at teacher cadet. So the teacher cadet program is somewhat robust in certain schools and not in others. So looking at whether we should actually centralize components of that, as well as, like I've mentioned, the teach local piece that's embedded in early college, high school, which I won't call that a pilot, but of course it's in a small school for us to certainly see how many students would consider careers in education. And this year there are, I believe, 12 graduating, first graduating class coming out of early college, high school. So hoping to enhance that. And that's a direct partnership with Trident Tech and the College of Charleston that will allow a student to become certified probably within 2 years of graduating from high school.
Awesome.
So,
and just thank you for your work. I know this is not an easy role, and so thank you for interested in teaching.
thank you.
Okay, I have no questions for that piece. Hiring number 4, capital projects and those programs, Dr. French.
Did you say capital projects? I remember skipping that one, but I don't have any questions. We're going to get more from that later on.
Yes, ma'am.
Jeff, I just just wanted to ask about the project management firms. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What does that mean?
So-
I mean, I know what project management firms are.
Right,
What
so
do
our-
y'all do with them?
So our capital program and capital maintenance program is executed with oversight from a project management firms. Let's say that. Each building program, we've gone ahead and resolicited that contract.
Okay. And do you put any emphasis on minority firms?
Yes, ma'am. In fact, as I mentioned earlier,
Yeah, I
we had,
remember.
the district goal is 20%. Our goal for this program is 30%.
30%, okay, okay. I just needed you to say that.
Mr. Harris?
Good question.
Mr. Copeland?
Questions right now. I thought we were coming back to that one. And we are going to get some more, like, not right now, thank you.
Dr. Ray?
Yes. Can we do 3 questions one time, or just one around now?
2 minutes, all right?
2 now. Well, this is one that I'm really interested in. And I just want the board to be reminded that we have had one project management firm for about 20 years. And we would like to know, what are we going to do about that situation? It seems as if it's unfair to have one firm. So this is another time, and I know we talked about bond capacity and so forth. But what can we do as an organization to make sure that we are fair in the process so that other firms can be involved in the project? And then I have 2 other questions.
One at a time.
Okay, listen. And I'll answer and I'll come back to my other 2 questions.
So the answer to the first question is, it is a procurement action. They established a procurement strategy for that. I participated in the selection last time, and I would stand up the fairness of that process to anybody. I was one of the panel members that was part of that process. It isn't one person that picks the contractor. There's a selection criteria based on experience, previous experience, the team you're going to bring forward, minority participation, and so there are a number of selection criteria that are established by the procurement officer that's part of that contract. So that has not been established for the next building program. Procurement and our staff are developing a plan for that next solicitation.
And my next question is, you mentioned 30% minority participation, and that includes your white females. But I'm talking about black-owned minority firms. What is the goal for that?
My comment holds true. The current building program is project management is 30% SWMB, all 30% is African American under the current program management contract. That's what it is right now. The district goal for us, the board goal for us has been 20%. And we sought out and got 30% in the current contract.
Okay. Mr. Copeland?
So, and I'm not sure how this got past me, but I don't remember the board action that created the current Citizens Oversight Steering Committee. Did we follow the same board action?
I'd have to go back and take a look.
We just check that. But I do want to say that to say, can we, sooner rather than later, because I know this isn't what we're talking about right now, go ahead and create the Citizens Oversight Committee for this capital building program. I don't know why we wouldn't go ahead and do that almost as soon as we're doing the waves, if for no other reason than they become as well versed in this program as us while we're getting ready to roll it out.
Yes, ma'am, it's just a matter of bandwidth. We've got a lot of priorities to take care of, we just haven't got to establishing the next committee yet.
And is that board function?
And I will say it falls in line with 2014, 2015. We did not establish the Phase 4 program Citizens Oversight Committee until well into 2015, after the referendum in 2014. So we just are following the same timeline we did last time, just because of everything else we've got going on.
But is it still a board function?
It is not a board function. It's something that.
I thought it was treated like health advisory committee. We pull the trigger, the advertisements go out. Is it not done that way?
I do not believe it was done that way in 2014.
Let's talk about that.
The district staff sent out the request for nominations, and I'm pretty sure that the nominations were brought back to the board for approval.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that's how it happened in 2014.
I don't have a question on that. Thank you.
Yes, my last question is, could you share with me how we prioritize the projects? Because what I can see right now, when I look at the whole list of projects, it seems to me that areas, the more affluent areas are receiving a big bulk of that funding for schools, whereas, and I'm looking out for my little District 23, where we're getting a wing here or there or something very small in comparison to what other districts are getting. How did that process come about? And how are you going to prioritize when it comes down to actually making sure that we're equitable from henceforth?
So last year, when the board approved the projects list, it was based on the capital master plan that was published and approved by the board last July. That plan looked at life safety, which included seismic conditions of buildings. It looked at sites that had trailers that needed additional capacity. It looked at future growth, where we knew homes were coming, improving, permitted. And we looked at individual programs like Montessori, like athletics, things like that. That was put in the master plan. A projects list was developed from that need and approved by the board of trustees. So that's how we got the list that was ultimately put on the referendum. For the waves, as I presented to each of you separately, related to how we developed the 3 to 4 year increments for the 3 waves, we used those same criteria from the capital master plan, but we also looked at the current facility condition, which buildings are wearing out faster than others, and weighed that in with the prioritization, as well as those that have already been approved by the mission critical process through the previous board. As far as equity across the district, we have tracked use of the funding from the year 2000 from the capital building program. And if you look at the number of students to the number of dollars spent, I can provide an updated table to you. The current table up until now is in the master plan. There's a table in there that shows constituent districts, amount of money spent in each building program, and the number of pupils to see the number of dollars spent across the district. I have that same data for capital maintenance, which is a big slug of money as well. So both of them have to be used together because capital construction provides more newer buildings. The capital maintenance provides the upkeep of the existing buildings. So those two tables put together, you can look at and say, that's how we've spent our money across the district for the last 20 years, and we expect to continue to do that. So for the way ahead specifically, I'm guiding off of the existing projects that are on the list and putting those in a grouping of priority order based on the projects that have already been approved by the board for funding. I hope that helps.
Okay. Thank you. Priority number 5, communications. Dr. Fresh.
Yes, so you were talking about early school 3, the took surveys to find out whether or not our outreach is effective. And I just wanted to ask, what's your strategy to survey families that aren't connecting with the technology?
So right now, our strategy for communicating with families who are not connecting with technology is actually for those students who are in person to send those documents home with them. But we are really trying to do a really good job of making certain that we have email addresses as well as correct telephone numbers for parents so that we can reach them in real time. So we've been working very, very closely with our school leaders to make sure that we do have accurate phone numbers and email addresses for parents. Today is just the best way, most effective, most efficient, and quickest way to get information to parents. But for those parents who we can't reach, then we have considered using a paper model, but we don't want to do that.
So you don't want to use a paper model at all?
No, if we had to, we would, but we know that using technology is the most efficient, effective, and quickest way to get information. And so we're trying to gather as much information from the parents whose information we don't have so we can send it.
Yeah, I'm just worried that when you survey only through technology, that one of the groups that's not getting connected with is just not even going to be able to give you feedback on that.
And so let me just take that one step further. And so one of the things is we talked about engagement. Can you hear me, or do I need to go to the podium? Thank you for that question. So one of the things that we have done, we work with other divisions and departments in the district, is for those parents who have not been able to reach, is actually building to them. And so most recently, as recent as Saturday, there was a team from Morningside Middle School, for example, that actually went to homes, went door to door. I know that it's done at a significant number of schools in North Carolina, Mr. Darby does, and I know North Carolina, we have elementary school, that the school leaders, if they have not heard from parents or students, that they're going to them.
I'm good, thanks.
Just given that we're still in the midst of COVID, what is the timeline to start in-person community engagement sessions?
That's a good question. That decision has not been made yet. I think that we have to take a number of things into consideration prior to, but we still are not allowing visitors into our schools, even parents. And so as soon as a district, the decision is made, then we will look at some in-person opportunities. But I can say that we are being strategic and thinking about how we can continue to meet virtually, but still achieve the goal, but do it virtually.
Thank you.
Ms. Taylor, thank you for the work that you're doing. I live in an area where grandparents are really the ones who are the caregivers of the children, sending them to school and doing the best that they can. Also, many of my young parents change telephones, cell phones, at least 3 or 4 times during the year. So at some point in time, will you all look at a strategy for reaching this topic? And I'm not saying right about now, but I know that that is a major problem in my area. So there won't be like a one-size-fits-all, because we really do have a problem in district communities of reaching the elderly parents and mothers who change cell phones so often.
Thank you.
No, and thank you for being the only one whose department came with actual percentage increase goals.
I don't have All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This,
Are there any
I think we have an opportunity to really dive into this to some degree. Let's have an opportunity to just do, is there any goal, this coach is for a good point, is there any goal that you feel is not at the top of the list, or something that, or one that you feel we want to instruct staff to move this way with? And I guess I'm going to ask that question because amongst all academics, all is at the top of the list, right? But for me, I think communication is one that I am really, really popular on. Just to go back on some of what Dr. Reed has said and Dr. French has said. I think in our session that we had, I believe it was Dr. French and Ms. Harris, I believe, with the communication piece. And we really advocated of the importance of trying to get out information in real time to our parents and to the community, to making sure that they are well informed, because it is very critical, particularly in this COVID time that we're in right now, being able to have that information readily accessible. So I strongly feel that the communication piece is definitely something we need to make sure that we clean up as much as possible in order to be able to get that real-time information out as quickly as we possibly can. Because there's a lot that's happening within the district that does not get out to our community and to our parents, and a lot of it has to do with, phone numbers not right, email not right, addresses information not right. So we need to focus on that. So for me, that's at the top of the list that I think I would like to really see us dive in the right as quickly as possible. And there will have to be some budgetary dollars tied to that, right? I mean, that has to come back and be part of the piece on how we improve that and make that happen. Is there anyone else with comments? That's all.
My highest priority would be under academic improvement strategy, be getting ELA curriculum in place. I don't, nothing jumps out at me as something we don't need to be focusing on, but I think we've talked about bandwidth and, and there's a staff already is working 24-hour days, 7 days a week. So, I mean, if there's something that you guys feel that, staff feels like, hey, there's something on here that is going to really take, it isn't going to accomplish a whole lot, might take away from other things, let us know.
So I do like that you've only brought 5. Because, and I guess I'm not sure how to say this, but you only brought 5, and that's good, and you've brought them from different departments. So I don't see one that rises above the other as much as I expect, pedal to the metal work in all of these areas simultaneously. Because the academic improvement and the COVID recovery kind of are the same, certainly the same students, the same teachers, the same staff, and they also incorporate mental health supports as well as academic achievement. If you don't have the bandwidth to do all of these equally as intensely, let's have that conversation before we start prioritizing one over the other. If we don't, I feel like with five major goals, and one of them is carved off into building programs, which has its own subset, that we ought to be, I think these are all excellent plans to be moving forward, and I'd like to see them all get equal, immediate, result-driven work done. And if we don't have the bandwidth that we have to start prioritizing within this, let's have that conversation sooner rather than later.
Yes, there are a couple of things that were running through my mind. In terms of the talent piece, which I think we're pretty much in agreement with the plan, is there any reason that we should try to accelerate that more than waiting until the CAL to do something, to make a decision? Or is there any way, would it be appropriate to consider putting that on the agenda tonight instead of waiting for the CAL? Because that's something that, I don't know if there's any delays that would harm that for this next school year. And then the other piece of that I'm thinking needs, that seems pretty urgent, is that you have some goals under the COVID recovery plan that are for this summer. And so anything that we can do to prevent delaying that from being implemented, I just don't know what the right course is.
I think it would be a good time to talk about the budgetary constrictions because of the way the budgets are.
So some of these items does require a dollar amount to be tied to them. So I think it's important that we make sure that before we swiftly move with anything, that we see what the dollar amount is going to look like.
And the fact that the dollars have already been targeted in this time's budget, so they're not going to get money to do these things until we approve the next budget.
All right, so
my priority right now is, and I'm not sure whether it's in any of the other priorities, but locating lost students. And I know that it's not just a district problem, But nationally, and I've been keeping abreast of school districts who cannot locate children, have not implemented a plan for locating those children, and basically have not hired the staff to make sure that we are locating those lost students. Whatever the problem is, we need to find those students, and so that they can have access. So I don't know whether it's finding lost students access, but it needs to be prioritized.
Okay, staff, I just want to say thank you for this work, and we went a little longer, but it was really needed to make sure that we lay out the concerns and that board members have, and making sure that we're all moving in the same direction, and giving you some guidance as to what the next steps will look like. So thank you for this. I believe that there are follow-up questions or concerns that board members, I'm going to ask that you please send those requests in, and so we can get your answers or questions addressed as quickly as possible. We will take a 5-minute break.